Good day and God bless you. Welcome to the Bible reading in chronological order. It's just such a privilege to have you with us. We thank the Lord for each of you. Thank you for joining us and for participating with us in the reading of the word of the Lord. And I pray that the Lord would just give us insight into his word, even as we come to him and read through his word together. Today we're back in the book of Job, and we're going to be going through chapters 29, 30, and 31. And these chapters deal with Job's final protest, the last words of Job, as it were, in the set. And when we look at it, getting to the end now, we can look back and see the different patterns that were developed even in the book of Job. Now, this is for those that want to dive in a little deeper into the study of Job, but we see the response of Job to his friends and the response of his friends to Job, and we see that this works in a cycle of threes. And that's very interesting to those that are doing deeper study into the book of Job, so I'm going to leave it at that. And for those that want to dig a little deeper, you really can, and there's something so beautiful in that as well. But we see then that after chapter 31, or at the end of chapter 31 in verse 40, it says, the words of Job are ended. And we're going to see how beautiful that ties in actually as we go in through the next chapters. But as we get into chapter 29, we see that Job longs for a time before this tragedy had struck. He reminisces about his stature in the land and recounts that he was a chief man in the city and he was wise in counsel. It says in verses 9 to 11 of chapter 29 that the princes refrained talking and laid their hand on their mouth. The nobles held their peace and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard me, then it blessed me, and when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me. That is so beautiful, and it's going to make a lot more sense when we come to the Lord's response to Job in the book of Job. But Job then, looking at all of that, thinking about the time before the struggle, it must have been so bittersweet thinking about that. Imagine thinking about his children that had passed on, thinking about the time that he had spent with them. It must have been so heartbreaking, and yet that was his comfort at this time. And in that, Job acknowledges that it was all the Lord's blessing, that even though he worked hard, even though he had been diligent, even though he didn't sin, yet it was the Lord's blessing. Because the Lord's blessing doesn't come because we have done good. No, the Lord's blessing is there because he is good. And so we get into chapter 30, and chapter 30 is quite an important chapter because in this chapter, Job sort of lays all of his cards on the table. Job is saying here that the men that once looked up to him now mock and disregard him, and that he has laid his plea before the Lord, that he is bringing his situation before the Lord, and even the Lord does not regard his plea. And we can look at it from our perspective and we can say, but isn't Job charging the Lord here? This sounds like sin to me, where Job would charge the Lord, where Job would accuse the Lord. But remember, the Bible says that Job sinned not with his mouth. Yet he said these things. How do we make sense of it? Well, take a look at the Psalms when you get through it. And then you'll see that David at times speaks to the Lord, and his Psalms go, my God, why have thou forsaken me? David speaks to the Lord openly and honestly, and this is what Job is doing. Job is not charging the Lord. Job is not accusing the Lord, but Job is being as honest as he can. The sin is not in being honest with the Lord about what you feel in your heart. The sin is to imagine that you can lie to the Lord, or that you can say something that he doesn't know is happening in your heart. And so Job is not sinning with his lips. He is just laying everything before the Lord, and he is saying, Lord, I am bringing everything to you. I am bringing my situation before you. Why does it seem that you are so far from me? And then we get to chapter 31, and in chapter 31, Job shares his heart and mind in this chapter, and he gives his final rebuttal against the injustice done to him by stating his case how he cared for the fatherless and the poor and the strangers. That is so beautiful. And again, the New Testament draws from that when the Lord Jesus is speaking and the Lord talks about the sheep and the goats. And he then says, those that fed the Lord, those that came to the Lord in prison, those that did all of these things to meet the need of the Lord. And he says, if you have done it to the least of these, then you have done it unto me. And to those that didn't do it, he says, because you have not done it to the least of these, you have not done it unto me. And so then the Lord separates them. And Job, he is aligning himself with the sheep in this chapter. He is saying that he has done all of these things, that he has put his heart and soul into these things. And now his final argument, or his final request is that he just reaps that which he has sown. That he doesn't get punished for things that he hasn't done, but the things that he has done, that he would reap the benefits of that. This is where we're going to leave it for today. I pray that the Lord would bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you, and the Lord give you peace. God bless you as you enjoy the reading of the word today.
Chapter 29. Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, Oh, that I were as in months past, as in the days when God preserved me, when his candle shined upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me, when I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil, when I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street. The young men saw me and hid themselves, and the aged arose and stood up. The princes refrained talking and laid their hand on their mouth. The nobles held their peace, and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard me, then it blessed me. And when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me, because I delivered the poor that cried, and the fatherless, and him that had none to help him. The blessing of him that was ready to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. I was eyes to the blind, and feet was I to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not I searched out. And I brake the jaws of the wicked, and plucked the spoil out of his teeth. Then I said, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. My root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. My glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand. Unto me men gave ear, and waited, and kept silence at my counsel. After my words they spake not again, and my speech dropped upon them. And they waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. If I laughed on them, they believed it not, and the light of my countenance they cast not down. I chose out their way, and sat chief, and dwelt as a king in the army, as one that comforteth the mourners. Chapter 30. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the clifts of the valleys, in caves of the earth and in the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. And now am I their song. Yea, I am their byword. They abhor me, they flee far from me, and spare not to spit in my face. Because he hath loosed my cord, and afflicted me, they have also let loose the bridle before me. Upon my right hand rise the youth. They push away my feet, and they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They mar my path. They set forward my calamity. They have no helper. They came upon me as a wide breaking in of waters. In the desolation they rolled themselves upon me. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my soul as the wind, and my welfare passeth away as a cloud. And now my soul is poured out upon me, the days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest. By the great force of my disease is my garment changed. It bindeth me about as the collar of my coat. He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. I stand up, and thou regardest me not. Thou art become cruel to me. With thy strong hand thou opposest thyself against me. Thou liftest me up to the wind. Thou causest me to ride upon it, and dissolvest my substance. For I know that thou wilt bring me to death, and to the house appointed for all living. Howbeit he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, though they cry in his destruction. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor? When I looked for good, then evil came unto me, and when I waited for light, there came darkness. My bowels boiled and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. I went mourning without the sun. I stood up and I cried in the congregation. I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. My harp also is turned to mourning, and my organ into the voice of them that weep. Chapter 31. I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above, and what inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is not destruction to the wicked, and a strange punishment to the workers of iniquity? Doth not he see my ways, and count all my steps? If I have walked with vanity, or if my foot hath hasted to deceit, let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know mine integrity. If my step hath turned out of the way, and mine heart walked after mine eyes, and if any blot hath cleaved to mine hands, then let me sow, and let another eat, yea, let my offspring be rooted out. If mine heart have been deceived by a woman, or if I have laid wait at my neighbour's door, then let my wife grind unto another, and let others bow down upon her. For this is an heinous crime, yea, it is an iniquity to be punished by the judges. For it is a fire that consumeth to destruction, and would root out all mine increase. If I did despise the cause of my manservant, or of my maidservant, when they contended with me, what then shall I do when God riseth up? And when he visiteth, what shall I answer him? Did not he that made me in the womb make him, and did not one fashion us in the womb? If I have withheld the poor from their desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or have eaten my morsel myself alone, and the fatherless hath not eaten thereof, for from my youth he was brought up with me, as with a father, and I have guided her from my mother's womb. If I have seen any perish for want of clothing, or any poor without covering, if his loins have not blessed me, and if he were not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have lifted up my hand against the fatherless, when I saw my help in the gate, then let mine arm fall from my shoulder blade, and mine arm be broken from the bone. For destruction from God was a terror to me, and by reason of his highness I could not endure. If I have made gold my hope, or have said to the fine gold, Thou art my confidence, if I rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because mine hand had gotten much, if I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart hath been secretly enticed, or my mouth hath kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge, for I should have denied the God that is above. If I rejoiced at the destruction of him that hated me, or lifted up myself when evil found him, neither have I suffered my mouth to sin by wishing a curse to his soul. If the men of my tabernacle said not, Oh, that we had of his flesh, we cannot be satisfied. The stranger did not lodge in the street, but I opened my doors to the traveller. If I covered my transgressions as Adam, by hiding mine iniquity in my bosom, did I fear a great multitude, or did the contempt of families terrify me, that I kept silence, and went not out of the door? Oh, that one would hear me! Behold, my desire is that the Almighty would answer me, and that mine adversary had written a book. Surely I would take it upon my shoulder, and bind it as a crown to me. I would declare unto him the number of my steps. As a prince would I go near unto him. If my land cry against me, or that the furrows likewise thereof complain, if I have eaten the fruits thereof without money, or have caused the owners thereof to lose their life, let thistles grow instead of wheat, and cockle instead of barley. The words of Job are ended.